Dear friends, welcome to my third episode of my world travel stories, and today we're going to focus on Antarctica. It's a very rare place for people to go, even though it is on the bucket list of many people, but to get to Antarctica is a huge challenge. Most commonly used route is from Ushuaia, which is south of Argentina. Generally, there are cruise ships which are Antarctic expeditions which take you to Antarctica, and it's generally around 11 to 12 days. It costs you about $4,000. But for me, my biggest challenge was going through the Drake Passage. You know, Drake Passage is one of the most treacherous voyages that you can ever think of. The wind can be minimum at least 75 kilometers an hour. And the waves, they say, can go up to 60 feet. And the ship will be tossed up and down. And with my sore back and not doing well on seas, I tried my best to avoid this journey. But the Lord had put in my heart to go to Antarctica, and many people said, what will you do there? And it's such an expensive trip, and not knowing what to do. But I just wanted to be obedient. So I started to research on the internet to see if there was any way that I could avoid traveling on the ship to Antarctica and instead go on a flight. And I came across a company called Victory Adventures Expeditions, and they were offering a one-day trip to Antarctica from Punta Arenas, which is in the southernmost tip of Chile in South America. As I wrote to them, Captain Ben Garrett wrote back to me, and I was excited to share my vision to travel to every country in the world that God had given me. And I want to share my message of hope through my testimony and my music. And Ben replied back saying, Benny, my daughter has been through YWAM and I'm a Christian, and I want to do my best to make sure that you will be able to travel to Antarctica and also play your music there and share your testimony. And I asked the cost, and he said the entire cost from Punta Arenas to Antarctica would cost you $2,900. And then he says, I want to give you a discount of $500 because every time I sell a ticket, I get $500, and this time I want to give that to you as a blessing. What a great note to start. So I was all excited for my trip to Antarctica. It's a very expensive trip. So I went on Facebook and I put a post asking people what is a reasonable way for me to get warm clothes and what all should I carry with me in order for my trip to Antarctica. And people suggested, and I went and bought everything that I can because I wanted to save as much money as possible. I was all set, and you can see this map that I've put forth. I went from Bangalore to Paris on Air France, and it took 10 hours and 50 minutes. From Paris, I went again on Air France to Atlanta. The entire journey took 9 hours and 55 minutes. And from Atlanta to Santiago, I went on Delta Airlines, and the journey took 9 hours and 15 minutes. And then from Santiago to Punta Arenas, I went on Sky Air, and the journey took 3 hours and 25 minutes. And from Punta Arenas to King George Island, it took 3 hours by a private airline, DAP. Altogether, I spent 36 hours and 25 minutes just on flying time across 5 continents. So I arrived in Punta Arenas on the 2nd of December at 2:25 p.m. and Pastor Alistair Morrison, the pastor of the Anglican Church, came to pick me up, and he took me to his house. It was already so cold and so windy, and I was really wondering, how will I really survive in Antarctica when I'm still struggling here in Punta Arenas? And generally they tell us to keep 5 days in Punta Arenas because based on the weather in Antarctica, every morning they decide whether they will take off or no, because it's illegal for a tourist to stay in Antarctica. And every morning at 5 o'clock we report, and they told that the previous flight, they waited for 5 days, and all the 5 days the weather was bad, and so they had to cancel the trip. And here, on one side, I'm thinking, wow, I wish it cancels because I cannot really bear this weather. It is too cold. I have arthritis and I'm an asthmatic patient, and I'm just like, I don't think I can. So I went at 6 o'clock in the evening to the DAP office, and that's the private airline that takes us from Punta Arenas to Antarctica. Carlos Parra was giving the briefing and the pre-flight instructions, and I was sitting there and listening, and I said, my goodness, I don't think I can make it. I don't think I can make it. And then I went to Carlos later on after everyone left, and I said, Carlos, is there any way for me to just stay on the base and not go anywhere? He says, no, Benny, you cannot stay on the base. You can only hop from one base to the other base. You can only watch things, but you cannot be in the base. It's illegal. So I told Carlos, I don't think I can make it. It's just too cold. Then Carlos told me, Benny, there are many people like you who come to this point and then they feel like quitting. But I'll tell you, you can make it. There are so many people who have made it. You can make it. Those encouraging words gave me the strength to go back home. And I don't think I slept through the night. I was anxious, excited, afraid, struggling to understand how will I really survive in Antarctica. So I just prayed and prayed and prayed, and I said, Lord Jesus, please do a miracle with the weather there. And the weather an average temperature there is between -10 to -60 in Antarctica. But in King George Island, it's much more better actually, probably -5 or -3. But the wind is the tough factor. Antarctica is the windiest place on planet Earth. And the wind is very, very strong. And they say it can go up to even 300 kilometers an hour. And so I was just like, God, how will I really make it there? So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I reported at the airport on the 3rd of December, and hoping that the flight will not take off. Honestly, I was not ready. And there were 3 people from Ukraine, 2 people from Holland, and myself. We were 6 people, and it was an 8-seater plane. And they told us that the weather was good because they have to make a decision when they take off, even coming back. Everything has to be programmed and planned well. So we took off at 6 a.m. in the morning from Punta Arenas Airport in Chile on our way to King George Island in Antarctica. And we were all excited. So everyone started to introduce themselves, and the Ukrainian people there, they were an entire family, and they owned many showrooms, and so wealthy people. And then came the Dutch couple who were retired, and so they saved up their money to travel. And then they asked me, what do you do? So I told them that I am a musician as well as a missionary. And they all laughed at me. They said, what are you doing here? This is not a place for you to be. And they made fun of me, but it's okay. And we journeyed on. We got along well, and then we landed at 9 o'clock in Antarctica. And just before landing is when they clear the snow so that the plane could land. So that's how Antarctica is. And Antarctica is very, very unpredictable too. When I landed in Antarctica, I had this warm clothing that I took from India. And generally there, to rent this orange, thick insulated jacket and the pant cost you around $150 to rent. And I wanted to save money as much as possible. So I didn't. And so everybody rented that. But I thought I could manage the cold. And so the guide, he felt compassionate on me, and he says, don't worry, you don't have to pay. You just take this one. So I wore it, and I'll tell you, if it was even $300, I would have spent it because it was so cold. And started to take us from one base to the other base. We saw things, and amazing things we got to see, and incredible God's beauty. And one of the interesting things is that, I had to wear dark glasses. And generally we think that, Only when it is hot and sunny outside, we wear sunglasses. And here, everything is so white that you can even go blind. Antarctica, 6 months is darkness, and 6 months during the summer is light. Day and night, there's only light there. The guy told us, the weather is so amazing. The wind is so calm. He says, this is a miracle. And he said, let's get on the Zodiac boat and let's journey to see some of the glaciers. And it was amazing. In fact, he said, I don't even remember when was the last time I took a team on a Zodiac boat because the wind is so strong in Antarctica. But honestly, it was just so beautiful. The weather was so calm and God did a miracle. And we went to see the glaciers, and he told us to hold on to the railing there on the Zodiac boat. He said, if anyone falls into that water, they don't even have time to turn around and come because you will be dead. The water is so cold. On our way back, suddenly I met this man who was on the snowmobile. And he looked at me and he said, hey, you're Benny Prasad. I said, how do you know me? He said, well, I am the commander of this air base in Antarctica. And his name was Carlos Medina Diaz. And he said, well, you're going to perform at the lunchtime for us, and we are all looking forward for that. So during the lunch break, I did a mini concert, and I shared my testimony to all the geologists, the scientists, and the cooks and others who were there for that event. This is a short glimpse of me playing Shout to the Lord in Antarctica. And the one who was touched the most, who was in tears, was the cook. And he said, it's such a lonely place here, and it's very tough to survive in Antarctica. Thank you for coming and sharing your music and your testimony. He said, it really encouraged me and brought me closer to God. And God had a plan to take me all the way to Antarctica to encourage one individual. And as I told you, Antarctica is so unpredictable. And around 2:30, suddenly it started to snow. And the guy told us, come on guys, rush to the plane, rush, because you guys have to take off. And he said, this is the longest I've had a team for, that is 6 hours. He says generally between 3 to 4 hours is what a team would get because of the weather. So we rushed into the plane at 3 o'clock. We took off from the base, and we started to journey on to Punta Arenas. And this time I had my smile, and we all started to discuss. And so I told the Dutch couple, what do you think about this trip? Don't you think that it was a miracle to have the weather so beautiful and so calm? And the Dutch couple told me, that is because of your prayers that you had with Jesus. That is what made a difference in this. Friends, there are times people might mock your faith. There are times people might make fun of you. And again, they are not doing it in a wrong way. Might be they're ignorant about that. But I'll tell you, hold on to your faith, hold on to your prayers, because there will be a season when the same people will come and look up to the God that you serve. And they would even ask you for prayers. We landed at 6:30 p.m. that evening in Punta Arenas, and God did such an amazing miracle in my life to take me all the way to Antarctica and to perform and to share my testimony and to experience the beauty of God in Antarctica, and then come back to India from there on. So dear friends, God can do amazing, incredible things. At one point, I wanted to quit when it was so cold. As humans, our circumstances, our instincts, or our physical strength would lead us to a certain point. Sometimes our ambitions and our dreams and our goals can be quite high compared to what our body can handle. But I'll tell you, when God gets involved in our lives, when you have the right people to encourage you, just like what happened to me when Carlos came and encouraged me, that don't give up, don't quit. That was enough for me to move forward. You need people like that in your life. Might be some of you are at the crossroads of your life and you have tried everything possible with your own strength and you feel like quitting. You feel like, well, there's nothing there, nothing left. Everything that I did, just like me. I carried all the warm clothes, but already I was feeling so cold in Punta Arenas and I wanted to quit. In fact, when I went to the airport, I even went with a mind hoping that the plane will get cancelled. But you see, God was so good. He gave me the strength and He gave me the courage to face the cold, which was dangerous for me. And God can really help you, carry you through. And I pray that God will bring someone like Carlos into your life that will encourage you and will strengthen you. And I know that one day you will have incredible testimonies to share, just like my story of Antarctica. Now, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do go to youtube.com/Benny Prasad. Also, there's a bell icon there. Please click on that bell icon so that every time I put a video, you will be able to get a notification. Do go and watch my other stories too on how I made it to Pakistan and also my trip to Latvia, which was my first international concert tour. Please do share these stories to your friends and families so that they will be encouraged, enriched, and they will be a blessing to others. God bless you all.